anybody know who the Moravian Brethren are? I don't. Do you? I don't know who they are. But they've included in their Apocrypha, in the Czech Kralika Bible. So maybe it's a Czech.
From
Armenia?
up in that Germany, not Germany, but up in that region.
Czechoslovakia or Moravia. Well, where's Moravia?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Central Europe.
Central Europe. Someplace there. But isn't that interesting? You know? Well, they got it, you don't. The book actually has nothing to do with the Maccabees at all, or their revolt against the Seleucid Empire. It's as described in 1st and 2nd Maccabees. Instead, it tells the story of persecution of the Jews under Ptolemy. Ptolemy is Egyptian.
Yeah.
Egyptian, from 222 to 205 BC. So this is prior to the Maccabean period. The name of the book apparently comes from the similarities between the book and the stories of the martyrdom of Eleazar and the Maccabean youths. And I have that as a quote, but I flashed through it. The high priest Shimon is also mentioned, and that high priest Shimon is possibly the guy, but not for sure, either the father or the grandfather or the actual high priest that took the Essenes with it. Shimon is known in history. The contents of the book have a legendary character, which scholars have not been able to tie to proven historical events. That's the big point with legendary character. It has appearances of a romance. According to the book, after Ptolemy's defeat of Antiochus, the third, see, there's our Antiochus, there's the third. In 217 BC at the Battle of Raphia, he visited Jerusalem in the Second Temple. However, he was miraculously prevented from entering the building. And this led him to hate the Jews, and upon his return to Alexandria, oh, you look, Alexandrian Jews, the Jews in Jerusalem, right? This is pretty neat. He put them to death in the hippodrome, in his hippodrome. Which means he's what? If he has a hippodrome, he's Greek. Yeah, Greeks had hippodromes, see, in amphitheaters. But Egyptians didn't. So he's going to put them to death. However, Egyptian law required the names of all those put to death to be written down. And all the paper in Egypt was exhausted attempting to do this, so that the Jews were able to escape. Boy, don't you wish the IRS would run out of paper. So that Ptolemy then attempted to have him killed by crushing by an elephant. However, due to various interventions, they escaped this fate, despite the fact there were 500 elephants that had been especially intoxicated to enrage them. It's a legendary character. It's really cool stuff. I mean, it's funny to us because we read it like this, but it's kind of like Paul Bunyan, in the account. Finally, the king was converted and bestowed favor upon the Jews, with this day being set as a festival of deliverance. So, critics agree that the author was an Alexandrian Jew, wrote in Greek. In the style, the author is prone to rhetorical constructs. It's Dirash. It's a Dirash document, basically. The themes are very similar to the Epistle of Aristeas, and the Epistle of Aristeas is a letter from about the same period. Again, bringing in another document that's similar. The work begins somewhat abruptly, leading you to think that it's a fragment of a now lost, no longer work. So, it was written after the Second Maccabees, since that book is cited in the text, even though it's about an earlier period. And that sets the date of the composition from the first to the end of the 1st century. Its use by the Orthodox Church might suggest its composition before the 1st century AD, and it may be a product of very late Judaism or early Christianity. The one theory was that it was written as late as 40 AD. It's a polemic against Caligula, but that's been kind of rejected. So, Revelation is also viewed as a polemic against Caligula and possibly Nero. So, in any case, reasons rabbis wouldn't like the third Maccabees. It's not about the Maccabees. Not about the Maccabees. It's a Greek-style document in Greek. Definitely wouldn't like that. And it has doctrinal and theological issues, that the rabbis, that the Pharisees would have problems with.
Would this be history or fiction?
Great question. Both.
Okay.
You know, the thing is that when, in these legendary accounts, it's kind of like Judith. Judith is probably a legendary account that was finally written down. How much history is in it? How much legend? Oh. But, you know, until we find another source that's comparable or some other document or earlier manuscripts, we don't know.
Okay.
So I would say that, you know, with the paucity, there's so little documentation from this period. Go with it, right? I mean, that's why I say if you sit down with like First Maccabees with the history, you'll find First Maccabees is the best history we have from that period. Second Maccabees, not so good, you know. But if you sit down with a history of what we know and compare it to what we have, see, the same thing's true with this one. If you can sit down with a history and kind of look comparatively and see what fits and what doesn't fit, you know. Was it historical fiction? And how much is legendary, how much has, you know, basis in fact? Because a lot of legends have basis in fact. It's worth reading. All this stuff. There's such a paucity of documentation in this period. Everything in the ancient world is worth reading. Because we have so little. You remember all those early founding fathers of our nation, they read Greek and Latin? And they read it. That you could actually read almost every document that we had in Latin and Greek. Because there weren't too many to read. Today, there's what, 1 million books that come out every year, so it's impossible to keep up. But in this period, you actually could keep up with what was the literature that was available. Issues. It's not about the Maccabees. There's lots of historical issues, but they're not stated obviously, so it was not intended necessarily to be fiction. It is intended to be history in the style of Herodotus. So the reason I mention this to you, that means that that Greek worldview, that Greek rational worldview, is obviously pervading the culture. And so we see that pervading the culture until we get to the New Testament. In the New Testament, we see a revolt, Christ's revolt against Irash thinking to Peshat and to Greek rational thought. So that's just a hint. The majority of the historical abnormalities are obviously accidents or otherwise undocumented events. That's true of this one too. And the assumption of worldviews is a problem for the rabbis. So, you know, there is, again, some of the stuff you get out of it, the theological issues that don't mesh well with rabbinic view. And there's like there's like 6 quotes, a lot of them from Peter's in Revelations, in the 3rd Maccabees. Not to rush through it, but that's the way it is. That's the way it goes. You got to get through all these books, or you got to at least know something about the Apocrypha, right? So you can say, yeah, I know something about the Apocrypha. Book 4 of the Maccabees is a homily or philosophic discourse praising the supremacy of pious reason over passion. If you put, instead of passion, derash, and you put, instead of pious reason, Greek rationalism, that's what it is. This is basically is a philosophic discourse from derash to Greek rational thought. The only problem with it is it's a Jewish document, and the Jewish document basically is starting from, we know the Hebraic worldview thought is derash, right? And they're kind of revolting against the Greek worldview, which is the Greek rational worldview. So we would have expected them to defend derash, wouldn't we? But they're not. That's really interesting. Very interesting. Let's see, it's not in the Bible for most churches. It's an appendix to the Greek Bible and the canon of the Georgian Bible. In the Reformation, in the 1688 Roman Bible, it was called Isop, but it's not printed in the Orthodox Bible today. According to this, it's not printed in the Orthodox Bible today. It's included as an appendix in the recently published Eastern Orthodox Bible. So Orthodox, like I said, kept it in the Apocrypha, and they returned it back to their source. The book's ascribed to Josephus by Eusebius and Jerome. That should be interesting to you. Jerome, one of the apostolic fathers, and then Josephus, Josephus being the Greek, the Jewish historian, and then Eusebius and Jerome, apostolic fathers in the early church. kind of late, but they ascribed it to Josephus, and that was accepted. But, you know, the differences in language and style were so great that today we've abandoned that theory. We're almost certain that it was not written by Josephus, and it was probably an earlier document. The book's generally dated between the 1st century BCE, and that's BC, and the 1st century AD, CE, due its reliance on 2nd Maccabees and the use by early Christians. Early Christians really use this book a lot, because D-rash to Greek rational, that was the teachings of Christ. Big time. Probably written before the persecution of Jews under Caligula, that's about 40 AD, and certainly before the fall of Jerusalem in 70. So easy pretty much to set this document, although it could be earlier. The reasons rabbis wouldn't like it, it's not about the Maccabees. So you got 2 Maccabees that are not about Maccabees at all. That's why they're not included most of the time. It's a Greek style document in Greek. It's a doctrine, theological issues to the rabbis. It is a philosophic document, and it's used by the early church. There's a lot of stuff in there that's probably in your liturgies, but you just don't know it. Because when the early church uses this stuff, it tends not to go away. See? You get stuck. The issues, it's not about the Maccabees, it's not a history, it's a great Greek philosophic discourse. It is a D-rash document. In other words, it's trying to argue in a Greek sense, rational sense, kind of falters. But that's okay. It's a transitional document. It's a transitional document. It's a homily, right? As opposed to a true philosophical discourse. Because remember, Greek philosophical discourse, I say something, you say something. I say something, you say something. We kind of go down a path on a logos to telos. Well, this is a homily. Hard to have a philosophical discourse in a homily, right? You have to wait to the New Testament when you really get discourses. Matthew, the 5 discourses in Matthew, the discourses in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, or Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. You don't get those until you get to that period. Let's see, and these are the quotes. There's like only about 5 of them, I think. In any case, what we get in the Maccabees, in all the Maccabees, let me see, I got this, more than that, I thought there was only a few, there's more. No wonder it took me so long to get them in there. Okay, in our Apocrypha classification, we have historical, legendary, agadic, apocalyptic, and didactic. And so basically, let's see, they fit in here. We have the first Maccabees in historical, and we have this should, the 3rd and 4th should definitely, the 2nd and 3rd should probably be in under legendary. We have, let's see, 2nd Maccabees as historical and legendary. And let's see, we don't have the 3rd Maccabees listed. 3rd and 4th. 3rd and 4th, the 4th is didactic, and the 3rd is, or the 3rd is definitely legendary. In any case, 1st Maccabees, we have an excellent history. We learned that the Jews invited the Romans, only source text for this history. In 2nd Maccabees, we have a legendary document with extensive New Testament allusions. In 3rd Maccabees, we have a legendary text with extensive New Testament allusions. In 4th Maccabees, we have a theological text, a philosophical text with extensive New Testament allusions. In other words, read them, look at them, find out what's in them. There's all kinds of neat stuff. And then finally, next week, we're going to look at the other stuff, the historical veracity, the importance and synopsis, and we'll have conclusions over the overall apocryphal documents. And I hope this wasn't too boring, because I know we're just, you know, I'm trying to familiarize you with the books and kind of their historical stuff. So, in any case, thanks for your attention.